Okay, we got a great call today, a really good podcast. I'm with Mr. Tony Rudd. And Tony, you're one of our neighbors over in Australia. Beautiful place. I appreciate you getting up early, or what time is it right now in Australia?
6 a.m. The full moon's just setting.
Wow. Yeah. And the full moon here, it's just rising literally at 4 something Pacific time or 1:47, which is like within the next hour, the full moon is actually coming up over here. So that's kind of auspicious as well. So thanks for jumping on the podcast. I want to just give a brief introduction and I'll let you kind of go into more detail. But you are a chiropractor. You're a person that works on personal health, personal growth, 20 years of working with people, helping them kind of get established and growing and mind, body, and spirit. And we had a great little chat before, we kind of got started where the personal growth inside is really as important, if not more important than embracing technology. And so thank you so much for your time today. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us how you got into the field and some of the experience from being a chiropractor and kind of get started with what you do and how you're helping people over in Australia.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, so I've been a chiro now for 25 years. Super passionate about alignment. And the principle of chiropractic when I was studying at university just blew my mind. I thought it was just about, adjusting, realigning backs, but it's so much deeper than that. It's connecting the mind and the body. And so to have my hands on people in that beautiful way of subtleness. Some people get freaked out by the crack, but the release that you give people to restore their function and improve their potential is way more than just reducing back pain. So for me, the journey started there 25 years ago. And yeah, working with athletes, working with babies, working with mums and dads and grandparents, 94-year-olds, and seeing such phenomenal health improvements has just been, I've been so blessed to be able to do that. And for me, I'm so passionate about understanding the root cause of the problem. Well, why are they going out of alignment? What's actually happening for them to continue to get misaligned? And, on a 3D physical world, of course, there's posture, there's lifting incorrectly, there's accidents, all the usuals that we think of. And then, of course, if you add that forward, it's stress and it's patterns and wounds. And so for there, as a chiro, I delved into the personal growth field and was very interested in that. So I did some amazing workshops, worked on myself, cleared some of my own wounds and traumas of family upbringing. And that just led me down a path of going into deep personal growth work, where we would go right down to the core of people's trauma and find where it's held in their body. And it might be something that they didn't remember as an adult that happened when they were 7 or when they were 12 or in their family. And through the personal growth strategies, we use a number of different things, whether it's deep breath work, whether it's, release work, psychodrama, clearing out those wounds. I saw such phenomenal change in people. So I was in that field for 18, coming up to 20 years now of one like group dynamics, working on people, and was ended up becoming one of the workshop leaders of, a crew of about 25. We would help take these participants through. So I've sort of done two arms, if you like, coaching, personal coaching and chiropractic. And it's just been such an honor to help people turn their power on, which has led me to create my own podcast called Realms of Power. And that's where we're inspiring people with that wisdom of how to step up into your own power. And yeah, so that's what's led me to where I am today.
I love that. And it's so beautiful because, when you're starting off as a chiropractor, it's primarily focused, maybe body, but then as you get into the coaching, then it gets into mind and spirit. And so then you're integrating body, mind, and spirit and really providing, so much more value because they're all intertwined and you master one and then you move into the other. And I feel like it gives you a very unique approach to being able to deal with trauma. When you're talking about what's causing the alignment to go out, I would be curious to know how much of that is actually based on emotional trauma and how that's being stored. Because I would say that as somebody who's not highly observant, but somebody that somewhat is, I would say that people that maybe slouch or have certain characteristics might have low self-esteem, or there might be certain things that you can pick up from various different types of misalignment. What are your thoughts on that, and how do you think that all, like with your experience, what is it that you see that kind of causes that from an emotional level?
Look, 100%. I would say probably the biggest cause of misalignment of the spine is the emotional side, like the anxiety that people have. So, anxiety, they will end up with a tight chest and they'll hold their posture in a certain way. When they're depressed, as you said, their heads are down, they're slumped, their posture is a reflection of their emotion.
Hmm.
Someone who's confident with their presence and their chest up and moving well, they're going to not have as many misalignments, or if I adjust them, it's going to last longer, quicker than
Hmm.
someone who's stressed, who's in shame or guilt. Those deeper resentment emotions are often stored down in the gut and they relate to low back pain, the anger, the people that run anger, a jaw, a neck, and upper. So the emotions definitely reflect into the body that I've seen as a chiro over many years.
Yeah, and I could that actually, as you talk about that, I can really feel how certain emotions can be stored in different parts of the body. And so, as you see that, what is the process to kind of, I would almost think of it kind of like layers of an onion, but it's layers of emotion that you're trying to kind of get through and release. And, because it takes years and maybe even decades for a lot of this trauma to kind of store and find itself in the body, what are some of the ways that you can start opening up and start getting some of those emotions out? What are some of the ways you can do it? Is it obviously through the adjustments you're doing some of that, because I'm sure there is an emotional lift that people get just from getting back to what is normal. But what are some of the ways that you can kind of peel off some of these stored emotional traumas to kind of start getting at the root of the issue? What is it that you find that are some of the ways that you're able to go about doing that to kind of start helping these people get to a different baseline of normal?
Well, look, let's use depression as an example, which is a common one. And you go to the medical doctor and they're going to generally give them some sort of pill, which is going to have an effect through their body. And I've found so many people I've been able to align or adjust just with the adjustments. And that's changed their brain chemistry in a way that with
Hmm.
support, they can get off that medication. So that's one example of just the pure alignment of your spine to allow the brain messages to go to and from the body will massively help the body chemistry and get out of that emotion. But then, having done all the coaching that I've done, what I've seen is these stored traumas, and sometimes it's just the touch, just the gentle touch, human touch that I think is getting lost in our society right now. And body work practitioners would sort of feel that as well. Take that up to the next level, and it's really listening to that person. We have two ears and one mouth. So listening to what's being said, but also listening to what's not being said. And sometimes that person needs space. They need space to just release and vent. And then when I've done the coaching, where we've done something like breath work, I don't know if you ever know about breath work, but they'll often have some stored trauma that might feel like a color or a shape in their body. That 3D body will be holding maybe a sexual abuse or inappropriateness or an emotional trauma, and that might be a red gooey thing in their gut. And just when I'm doing the body work, now I'm so refined, I can just feel into that, and sometimes just talking it out and releasing that is the underlying cause then of their spine that keeps going out. So
Hmm.
it's chicken and egg, it's emotions and physical. And I've always said that love is an openness to a connection. And really the mind body connection is the spine. And a lot of people forget that. They forget the connection of the mind to the body in the 3D world.
Mhm.
And having that alignment is absolutely critical, whether it's through the adjustment, through the awareness of breathing, your posture, that sort of thing. And look, there's such a deep topic, Sean. So I could go on all day, but I get excited because when I see the change in people, it's just amazing.
It's actually beautiful. You know, the beautiful part though, Tony, like we were talking about, is that you're trying to figure out a way now that you can reach people by the millions. You know, it's one thing to do it with a person in one on
Mm.
one, but how do I take this skill set and this love for wanting to help others and broadcast it into greater terms? I was going to ask you, and you brought it up already, but how much of a, the breathing part of it, how much is the breathing and maybe even stretching able to kind of breathe out some of those emotion? I know for me, I listen to a lot of, I love to program myself. Program is actually such a great word, but I love to program myself with positive things in the morning. And a lot of times, even as conscious as I am of emotions and storing them and they still have those waves of that'll come through. And I find that breath work is really a beautiful way to kind of breathe out some of the emotion and breathe in and sort of visualize, getting yourself kind of back into in alignment, like mentally and spiritually. How much of that do you utilize in the practice of what you're doing with the coaching and also even with the chiropractic work that you do?
Oh, look, it's absolutely key. I run a workshop where I'm educating people about their posture, about their breathing, about all that stuff. And our bodies need oxygen for survival. We talk about the nutrition industry and how important food is, and there's so much money to be made and diets and all that stuff. But you can live many days without food. And then you go, water, how important is water? You can only live a few days without water. And drinking good, clean water hydrates your tissues, and the life force of water is phenomenal. And then we go, well, how long can we live without air? And it's really only a few minutes. So by far, it's the most important. And the shallow breath that you just took there, Sean, versus a very big deep breath, it's something like 50 times more. So when you're doing deep breathing, whether it's meditative breathing or a full breath work session, that conscious breathing is so obviously oxygenating your body.
Yeah.
And your brain weighs about 3% of your body, but it uses about 20% of your oxygen. So if you are depleting your oxygen, you are just not living in your full power. And
Hmm.
my goal is to turn people's power on. So breathing has to be one of the main keys. Conscious breathing, meditative breathing, breath work. There's so much out there, but there's not a lot of money to be made because you can't really sell breathing. So a lot of people in the medical industry don't really talk about it. And I think if we just get back to the basics, back to breathing,
Hmm.
drinking clean water,
Hmm.
we're way, way ahead. So I integrate it massively.
I love that. The other thing that's interesting, because like you said, this can segment into a lot of different categories. However, one thing about posture, and I know you're expert on this, when you're not at a really like broad alignment, the breath starts becoming more shallow. And as the breath becomes more shallow, then there's less energy because you're not oxygenating the body. There's a clear difference, obviously, between running and gasping for air to kind of rejuvenate and get the oxygen back in the body. But then on the opposite end too, there's that part where you're slumped over and in maybe a negative type of mood and you're not taking those deep breaths and therefore those shallow breathing is not giving the body that energy. I mean, oxygen ultimately is an energy source also for the body, and keeping the body highly oxygenated is highly important actually for preventing disease and illness. And so there's a real correlation between the alignment and the type of breath that you're getting. And even when you're in those states, I think the thing is, like with me, Tony, that I've learned is that it's not that you're not going to hit bumps in the road in life. You will. But it's understanding that when you've done that, it's like, whoa, I have shifted into an area now that's not my baseline normal. I'm now stressed or I'm this or whatever. And then it's knowing, okay, hey, this has moved over. I need to address it. And now, in order to address it, let's start with some good deep breathing. Let's start with just focusing back on our posture. Let's get back into alignment because, one of the things that I talk about in some of the videos is that what happens is that your baseline gets moved over. So if your baseline is healthy, happy, and upbeat, and you're breathing right, but then all of a sudden you hit a slump, if you stay in that slump too long and you don't acknowledge it or you don't, or you're not conscious of it and you don't move it over, that becomes the new normal. And then that slumping
Mm.
and that shallow breathing now becomes the new normal. And then obviously there's a compounded set of circumstances that come from that. It's lower energy. I don't feel like doing anything. I'm too tired. And that becomes the baseline for a while. And so I think that, one of the things that's beautiful about what you do is that you reestablish the baseline of where you should be at. It's like, okay, we've had some emotion, we let some stuff go, we put you back into alignment, and we've done some deep breathing. Now, this is where we need to stay. And if you catch yourself moving back over, we all know some of the basic core things that we can do to kind of shift it back over. So, what are your thoughts on kind of, some of those types of things as far as catching yourself switching over and trying to reestablish a solid baseline?
Oh, look, I love that. And go back to the breathing for one sec. I was just thinking then when you were talking about the actual anatomy of the lungs, going from the trachea and branching down smaller, 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 and it looks like an inverted tree. And then
Exactly right.
what we do is we get oxygen and then we give out carbon dioxide. And the tree out there, which looks like the inversion of the
The
lung,
lungs.
takes our carbon dioxide and gives us oxygen. What a phenomenal just link that is in alignment of this world and how it works. And I don't think people really take the moment to look at the magnificence of nature. So
Mhm.
I always get people when they're feeling that off-centeredness you're talking about, feeling that slump, just to reconnect with nature and not just go for the bushwalk, but think about the tree, think about the correlation of humans and trees or animals and the amazing things that are out there, the sunlight, the air, the water we have,
Mhm.
and stay in that gratitude because that allows you to stay upright, to stay in your
Yeah.
presence and to stay in your power. And the opposite is when you are slumped over and when you're feeling down and depressed and not motivated, excuse me, you just don't look as good. You're not as
No.
good looking. So, Sean,
Mhm.
if I'm talking to you and you're slumped down in the chair, I'd be like seeing you all slumped down and go, "Come on, mate, get up, bring your
Yeah.
chest up."
Yeah.
And that just lifts people because they're like, "Wow, I'm better looking, I'm feeling more energy, I'm feeling more vibrant."
Mhm.
And there's so many kids these days that just don't have the motivation. They're looking down at their phones all day and they're leading to an epidemic of Alzheimer's. And Alzheimer's, that loss of memory, if you've ever been to an Alzheimer's ward, and I know with the technologies you have, you're helping a lot of people with a lot of chronic conditions. But the Alzheimer's ward, they're all head forward. And
Mhm.
I think we're heading for an epidemic of Alzheimer's because it correlates to their posture. If your head's forward, your brain's getting pulled. And if your brain's getting pulled, it's going to affect the cerebrospinal flow and the messages from the brain. And that might lead to, oh, I've just forgot my keys. And then it might lead to, I've forgot who I am and who my kids are. And that's not a way anyone wants to go. So if you can do one thing for your posture by keeping upright, looking up off that phone, chest up, and think, well, how to avoid long-term pain. If it minimized even a 5%, 10%, 50% your chance of getting Alzheimer's, I think that could be my kick up the bum for the listeners to keep themselves upright.
100%. I love it. And to even take it a little bit further with the nature, uh, man, it's so powerful. It's so powerful. So when we are plasma energy beings, our consciousness, our aura, our light being is actually plasma energy. And every tree has a massive plasma aura field. Even grass and plants are all plasma energy. And one of the things that I do on a regular basis is we've got some really beautiful woods and hiking areas here. And I go out there and it literally charges your body. It charges your aura being in a field. If you can imagine thousands of trees and you're walking through them all, but all those fields are interconnected. So walking through these forested areas or even areas with a lot of, bushes or whatever it might be, these are all, and they're sentinel beings. They're actually conscious living entities, just like we are. There's a lot of people, indigenous people. You've got the Aboriginal people there who are masters of the land. Like these Aboriginal people, honestly, Tony, I don't feel they get enough credit for how intelligent and how dialed in they are to nature, energy fields, plasma energy. Like they can have the ability to literally create storms and bring rain and control so many different things. They can literally steer tornadoes. And so being out in nature and then the grounding part of it, where you're actually physically putting your feet on the ground, the earth is the same frequency your brain runs on. Your brain runs on a Schumann resonance. And when you're disconnected from the earth and you're buried, like you said, into electronics, you are not running on the frequency that is your natural base frequency that you should be planted into. And so in addition to that, to kind of get to the breathing part of it, you go out, you start walking, you're taking those deep breaths, but you're also stimulating endorphins and things that are natural ways for you to kind of like be naturally upbeat. I want to say naturally high, but it's really, one of the things that they do for heroin addicts and others is try to get them in the gym, try to get them to work out, try to get them to get into these routines where they're doing heavy breathing because it releases endorphins, which are the things that you kind of get, like you feel good with, it's a kind of feeling good that's natural. And so embracing that and trying to figure out ways to get that into your routine. And it could be something as simple as taking a walk. It could be something as simple as going out and finding a nice little place to sit down. I just had a woman who's got a multitude of health issues. I mean, like a laundry list of them. And she's asking me, should I get the Wave Watch or the Terahertz one? And I said, look, I wouldn't get anything. I would make sure that you're going outside and putting your feet on the ground because your autonomous
Yeah.
nervous system is completely jacked up. You're on a multitude of different prescriptions that may or may not be serving you. But the number one thing that you need to do right now is you need to get outside, get your feet on the ground, and then, that in turn is going to start alleviating a lot of the issues. Like when you're not touching the earth, the first thing that happens is it starts clogging your blood. Your red blood cells need electrons to keep from clumping and clotting. So if you're not touching the earth, you're not getting electrons, then you're already having issues with that. I liken it many times to driving a car with dirty motor oil. But like the beautiful part of how we started our conversation, and for anybody that wasn't with us, because you weren't, we're talking about all the wonderful things that can be done without technology, right? And so that's the beauty, really, of what you're doing is that you're kind of bringing people into homeostasis, but doing it with the breathing, doing it with, sort of using your intuition to sense where there might be issues or where there might be trauma stored, and then giving them that outlet where they can talk about it and sort of release it, and giving them that space where they have that space where you are putting the focus on that, and we are going to talk about that and let them bring it up and kind of and then breathe through it, and then find these ways that are restoring the posture, but ways that we can get people back into feeling good about themselves and reestablishing real wellness internally, right? Internal wellness. So I feel like, you bring up a really good point when you talk about getting into nature, because that can splinter into a whole host of additional benefits. But all those things, are all interconnected when it comes to wellness.
Well, look, I think, Sean, the way the medical paradigm is, we have lost as a society the trust in our body to heal itself. And we have this internal spark that the body heals itself. And the number one thing you need for that is alignment. So if
Mhm.
you've broken your arm, right, you're going to need the medical doctor to reestablish the alignment of the arm, and then the body will heal itself. If you've misaligned your back and you leave it out of alignment, the body's spark is trying to heal itself, but because it's out of alignment, it won't do it as well. So having that alignment is one of the number one things you can do
Mhm.
to assist the body to heal itself. And that alignment is, as we've just talked about, of the mind and the one that people don't think about, which is the electrical system and electromagnetic nature of this world. And the grounding you said is absolutely key. We have been disconnected by these shoes. Even the walks people have out in the forest are generally not bare feet. And so it's bare feet on the ground to reconnect yourself with the earth. Those things are free. Breathing is free. Drinking clean water generally is free. And posture, having your own posture from birth, birth trauma. How many little babies get aligned? You know, they've been through a birth trauma, they've they've fallen over when they're learning to walk, and they don't get aligned until they're 10, 20, 30, 40 years old. And their backs are all out, and then they wonder why they have all these diseases because they're reliant on this
Yeah.
chemical pharmaceutical industry, which is there for a reason. But I believe people have got to step up into trusting their body to heal itself and not limiting their senses. We have these five senses that people talk about, but what about our sense of balance, our sense of judgment, our sense of all the other senses that aren't talked about? Our brains are these phenomenal, powerful tuning objects, our third eye that people don't access even and don't even know what is. The pineal gland and the stimulation of the pineal gland to access our consciousness through our sleep. I just get lit up by this, Sean. I'm just
Yeah.
so excited about
Yeah.
people stepping into their power.
Yeah, and I think honestly, Tony, the other thing is 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 putting them in a mirror and saying you have this power. It's the knowledge of knowing that you have the power, right? That's also part of it. And as you're talking, the other thing that I'm thinking is that, we're talking about alignment and going out of alignment, but how many people do I deal with over the course of what I've been doing that have a bad knee or a bad hip or even a bad back, but really what it was a sub issue that came from the back being out of alignment because as you know, you get a little bit of messed up back and you get out of alignment. Now you sort of get what we might call a pelvic tilt. And a pelvic tilt now might put more power or more like it might throw off now your knees, you're holding all your weight on more on the right than the left. Now the right knee is taking more weight, or the hip is not now, because you've shifted your alignment, and now your body is trying to compensate for that. But ultimately, that will start breaking down different parts of the body, and then you're thinking, well, maybe there's technology. Well, sure, maybe there is, but what about going back to those core things that we're talking about, which is taking a look in the mirror and making sure your chest and shoulders are up and down and taking those deep breaths and really being conscious of where is my alignment at and and then consulting with a professional like yourself to say maybe I do need an adjustment and maybe I need to get that back in place. And then like the goal and the beauty of what we do, Tony, is we give people knowledge. The goal is to provide the knowledge base. I always tell people, you didn't find this video, the video found you, because somewhere in our conversation, there was something here that was of value that maybe we just needed to just bring up and talk about. And many times I always tell people I'm actually talking to myself. There might be an audience out there somewhere, but in many cases, these are things that I need to reaffirm, that I need to reconnect with, that I need to become conscious of again. It's one thing to know it, it's another thing to be conscious of it. And then ultimately, it's conscious taking action and saying, okay, whoa, time out. I am feeling really, like I'm doing all these checks and balances and I'm not checking off all the boxes right now, and I need to. And how do I fix it? Because this is the normal process of life. I call it sometimes the river of life, but sometimes you're hitting the rapids, sometimes you're in a pool, sometimes you're going over the falls, but you adjust to things as you go, and then you try to maintain and stay conscious of, hey, I'm a little bit out of whack right now. Like for me personally, I took on a really big project a month or so back, and it really got way out of control in the medical part of what I do. It turned out to be a project that I thought we're going to go get 5 semi trucks of equipment, and we got 50, and I had to scale up and logistics. I'm like, oh, what in God's name I got myself into? And not only that, I'm not sleeping. I'm totally stressed. I'm trying to make sure stuff's on time. I'm dealing with hospitals. And I shut that down because I realized that that was not serving me. I mean, there might have been a financial part of it that had value, but what it was doing to me emotionally, mentally, and everything else, I'm like, whoa, this is not good. And I'm right now in the process of getting back and reestablishing the routine where there is time to go out and do the hikes and hit the gym or all these different things. But I was conscious enough to know that this is, there might be a financial part of this, but that's not like I'm an entrepreneur and I'm a business person and I can figure out a lot of ways to do it, but I'm not going to do it by drive myself absolutely crazy. I mean, there is a point where I just said, look, this is not good for me on many different levels. And I had to shift gears. But I think that, when we start talking about these different types of things, I think that the core value, the core thing that if we can get out of this conversation today is knowing where you are and where your alignment in life, mentally, physically, and bodily is.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the podcast I've done called Realms of Power is about stepping into your power and knowing that there is timing in that. So the tide comes in, the tide comes out, and then sometimes a pause in between the tide and being able to recognize that flow of time of where you are at in that. Power doesn't always have to be up and full on and going for the million projects. Power could be in your feminine power of stillness,
Mhm.
of calmness, and that's a power too. And for entrepreneurs, especially, we need to look at ourselves sometimes and go, geez, where am I at that scale? Am I going for burnout? Am I going to cook my adrenals here? Or am I, right where I want to be, right on the edge of fun, living my true, authentic life? The principles I've got in Realms of Power is number one, to be authentic. And if we're not being true to ourselves, then what is the point? We're doing what other people say we should do. The second one I've got is do more of what you love doing. Like you said, go for that walk, do that thing in nature. And then that gives you the ultimate freedom. And freedom might be for some people financial freedom, but for some people it might be time freedom. For some people it might be relationship freedom. For
Mhm.
some people it might be whatever the freedom it is that they're looking for. And they're the big principles I've been going for in Realms of Power. And so to people to recognize where they're at on their journey and to step into that, to wake up with that first morning thought, go, how can I turn my tap on today? And my
Mhm.
tap is true aligned power. How can I turn my tap on today? Why am I turning my tap on today? And that power that we have is, like you said, Sean, it's internal.
Mhm.
It's inside of us. And I think the way the world is now, so many people are in victim consciousness. They're looking for someone to blame. They're looking for someone to fix them. They're justifying why they haven't done that exercise or whatever. And they're looking for the savior.
Mhm.
And really, the savior is within. The savior is within you. So it's your choice to step into your power.
I love that. And I love the fact that you're using the word authentic, being true to your authentic self, when you're on the right path. One of the things that we talked about that I shared with you is that, I'm 59, but I don't feel like I even got close to really what my life path was until I was in my 40s. And everybody's like,
Mm.
what should I do? What should I do? And, as a kid, you're like, well, go to college. Okay, well, I went to college. I dropped out after like 3.5 years. Both my parents taught college. They were not happy, but it wasn't for me. And I went through and did a lot of different things. And being in the medical industry and building hospitals and being able to help a lot of people, even working doing a lot of intensive care work with individual people that are really in bad shape. That is like there's that fulfilling part of it. But I think that getting into the podcast and collaborating with people like yourself that are out to do good in the world and trying to reach bigger, broader audiences, to me, that is so fulfilling. Like, to me, that is like, I feel like I'm really in my space and I love it. And there's not a moment of that to me that's ever work, you know? And there was a gal that I interviewed last week, and I told her, I said, you know, my job that makes me happy is creating a platform where I can help other people achieve their dreams. You know, where I can help Tony and give him a place where he can share his voice and bring his knowledge out to the world and share, you know, all this great information and help other people. You know, to me, I've never once looked at how many views I have or you have. I don't care. Like, we're people out there that want to do good in the world. That's what matters to me. It's not, I don't, none of that other stuff to me means anything. But it gets me so excited, and it gets me excited to see you getting excited as well, because this is really, we're on point. You know, we're really in a time, place, and circumstance within our lives where we're really looking to find ways that we can serve others at a higher level. And so I think that ultimately that's the goal. And, you know, the mystery and how that's done kind of always unfolds on a day by day, minute by minute, hour by hour basis. The other thing that I would say when it comes to true power is understanding that you have the ability to manifest and create the reality that you're looking for, and knowing that you have that inner power within to do that. And for me, one of the things I do now, there's a lot of people, Louise Hay, Neville Goddard, Napoleon Hill, Bob Proctor. I mean, you could go through a list of people, but the whole thing is understanding that this is knowledge that if you can understand that you live in the end, meaning that whatever the imagination, you know, they say, well, there's no difference between the conscious and subconscious mind, or the subconscious mind imagination, because you are creating the reality that you want to exist, but you have to live and visualize it as if it's already happened. And when you start tapping into the ability, and you know, the other thing, Tony, you, everything in this room is matter, right? It's I can knock on my desk, I can knock on my computer, and it's those are nothing more than condensed light particles. But if you look inside the particle, 99% of it is actually empty. So there's a part of it that's like, even though this is a third dimensional material world, we still, as spiritual beings, have the ability to control that. Even when we're talking about water, your mind, when you project thoughts into water, you can control the molecular structure of what that water looks like. Masaru Emoto, for 20 years, wrote several books, Japanese scientist, very well documented. And what they did is they projected thoughts into water, froze the water, and then looked at it under a microscope. And if you focused love and compassion into water, you would turn it into the most beautiful snowflake. And if you thought negative thoughts, you could do the exact opposite. So when you think about how powerful your mind is and how much power you really have, and then you learn to start addressing it and start to harness it, and then to start use it to manifest the reality that you're looking for, you know, that's when, you know, and then we incorporate everything else we're talking about. That's when you really start saying, wow, we are really, you know, we're spiritual beings having a human experience, and we need to dial in and be more into that spiritual aspect of what we do. One of the things that I like about some of the technology that we have is it's not related to your third dimensional body at all. It's actually about putting you in a higher vibrational set so that your clairvoyance, your compassion, your ability to telepathically communicate, lucid dream, all these gifts that we are just masterful at, and we've somehow forgotten them, but you tune back into those, and then you really start going, wow. And then you get out into nature and you start the breathing, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, I'm unstoppable right now. And this is my goal, and this is my vision, and I'm already living it. And I'm letting the universe, you know, conform around me, because I am the power. I am the consciousness that's moving all these things to happen around me. And you know, like with anything, it's a process. But as you embrace that, as you understand that, and as you start demonstrating it and consciously tuning into it, that's when things really start becoming kind of magical.
Oh, I love that. I've got to share one of the podcasts I did with a lady called Ixta Rose. just nourishment of the heart. She was talking about pretty much all of the things you were just talking about. And her story, just very briefly, was in her 30s, she overnight lost the use of her hands and arms, couldn't move them, was a medical mystery, did all the medical tests, all the different types of healings. Nothing worked. So she literally couldn't move her arms or hands. Her life was seemingly over. Did all the naturopath, everything, you know. So finally found out about something called frequency homeopathics, and essentially using the vibrational field of the water. When they read her biofield and found that there were certain elements, not that were out from a blood test perspective, but out from a frequency perspective. And then with intention of reading her body, put that into the water, like you said, with Emoto's crystals of the water. And within 2 or 3 weeks, she regained the use of her arms or hands. And that story just gives me the chills that the things out there that we still don't really know as a whole in society
Mhm.
is real. It's legit. It helps people. And like Tesla's work and the frequency work with Rife machines and all of that stuff is actually phenomenal. And I'm lit up that we're re-exploring and refining those sort of things. Now, her partner is a chiro, and they're just a great couple, and they're just now living a phenomenal life. So for people, and I know you look after a lot of different people with severe things, there's always hope. There's
Always,
always hope. There's always
always.
something else that we haven't found yet. And if you can trust that you'll be led or find that way, it doesn't always work for people. Some people, for whatever reason, their path is a different path. So it's just being open to the possibility that there is something there for you.
Yeah, I mean, the beauty about everything is that we live in a world of infinite miracles and infinite possibilities. And at any minute, you can create a reality, but, understanding that you're living in a world of infinite miracles and infinite possibilities and that everything's possible. Because, Tony, one of the things I've always said, and I think you touched on it before we went live, the minute you've lost hope, it's over. Like, I don't like the minute that you've given up and you've lost hope and you've given up on the fact that anything and everything is possible. And like you said, doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to get the outcome. But the minute that the hope factor is gone and you've thrown in the towel and given up, there's nothing mental. I don't care what technology you've got. I mean, technically it might have some benefit, but it's over. Like you can program yourself. And because I deal with terminally ill people on a regular basis through the medical industry, I can tell you that I get people all the time that I either talk to or come in here and they'll say, no, this is what I've been told and this is how it's going to go down. And I will say, well, it's possible that, but it's also possible there could be a different outcome. And perhaps there's something else that maybe you don't know yet that's out there that might help you. But when they're mentally shut down and they've already programmed it in, there's a, not to get too deep into it, but a lot of times they'll say, well, you've got 60 days, you've got 90 days. Well, you could buy into that, and that could actually be quite true. But does that mean that every time that that's been given out, that that's been true? Many people have said, no, I'm going to live for another 10 or 5 years or whatever it might be. And they do. And there's just as many people that have not accepted that sentence and have said, no, I do believe that there is going to be, and I am going to have that determination and that grit and that fortitude to say, whatever it is, I'm not throwing in the towel. I'm going to go, I'm going to have tenacity and strength, and I'm going to, do everything in my power, mentally, physically, and spiritually to extend the clock as far as I can. And I'll go out on my own terms. And sometimes it works out for the best and sometimes it doesn't. But one thing is very clear that if that isn't there and you have given up, you are definitely not going to probably see the same results that somebody else that has a different mentality or a different viewpoint will. And, I think that, one thing I'm going to circle back to that I talk about a lot is that regardless of anything and everything going on in my life, your life, or anybody else watching this, there's always a form of gratitude that we can embrace and get into some type of gratitude. And there was the gal that's in here today that's dealing with a very terminal health situation, and we went into gratitude, and I said, I know that what you're dealing with right now is very difficult, but I'm grateful right now that you're here with me. I'm grateful that we can exchange a conversation and share love and compassion. I'm grateful that on this day right now, it's beautiful, it's sunny, and that we're here together sharing laughs and having fun. And I'm grateful for the fact that I'm here to serve you. And I'm grateful that I've got a platform, and I'm grateful that I've got beautiful people around me that care and love me. And I'm grateful for, and I go into that mode of being grateful because ultimately, when it's all said and done, those are the things that you take with you. And when things get a little bit tough, and they do, and I deal with a lot of that, I always try to find that other part of the coin where there is good things. Like I tell the girls, I work with two fabulous girls, and there's days where it's like, it just doesn't. But there's always small little victories. I got a door for somebody. I made somebody's day because I told them that they look nice. Or, there's always victories. There's always little things that are mixed into your day that you can put in that are what I call victories, where you brought a smile to somebody's face. You were loving and compassionate in some way that helped make their day. Or there was something that you did that, despite everything that went wrong, there was some good that also came out of it. And the other thing that I'm going to say, and I'm going to throw it back to you, even when I was getting pounded, and I got pounded for about 6 weeks taking on that project, I said, I have no regrets. I took on that project thinking that it was going to help me achieve a higher level of success to give me grow my business. It didn't work out that way. Guess what? That's okay. Things don't always work out the way you want them to, but I'm not a guy that's afraid to take risk. And I'm not a guy that's looking in my rearview mirror saying, "Oh, I wish I wouldn't have done that." No, I did it. I did it with the thought process of, I think that this could work out really good. It didn't, but I'm not sitting and looking behind. I'm looking forward. And, I always tell people, Tony, there's a reason why when you drive a car that your windshield is this big and your rear view mirror is that big, because you need to be looking forward. You need to say, and I can look at that and say, you know what? I learned a lot through that experience. I learned what's really important to me. I learned what my true passion and what my true authentic self is about. There was a lot that I learned, and it was an expensive lesson, and it was a little bit, there was a little bit of there was a lot of stress in that, but it's okay. I can look at that from an analytical standpoint and say, okay, that didn't work out the way I wanted to, but what good came out of that? What benefits came out of that? And what can I learn and grow from? And I think that all of us in life get those kinds of situations that are presented to us, some bigger than others, some smaller than others. But hey, one thing I notice is when things go wrong for somebody, you really know who loves you. You really know who's there for you. You really know who cares about you. You really know how strong that bond of love is that you have with those people. I mean, I've got buddies of mine that 10 years ago we wouldn't do this, but we'll tell each other, hey man, I love you and I appreciate you being there for me. And I don't care how that comes off. I have no concern whatsoever. But as a guy that knows that anything can end at any time, I don't take for granted that I'll be around in a year from now or 5 years from now or even tomorrow. I live every moment and every day like I'm going to live it to the fullest, and I'm going to let people know that I care about them, and I'm going to let people know that I appreciate them. And I don't care how it comes off, and I don't care what anybody's opinion is, but I do not need to wait, 5, 10, 15 years ago or from now to tell people I care about them, I love them. And I understand that in life, there is nothing more powerful and more valuable than those loving, compassionate relationships. And as a guy that's based in energy and frequency based technology, Tony, 432, the love frequency, is the most powerful frequency and you do not need technology for that. If you start telling people that you love them, you care about them, or you start telling people, hey, you look nice today, that's a nice outfit, or hey, you basically give out that love, it comes back to you multiple fold. And that carries an aura and that makes you feel good. And it's like, the funny thing is, I'm going to throw this back to you. Sometimes I say, you know what? I'm not saying that for you. I'm saying it for me because it makes me feel so good to compliment people and let them know, hey, you know what? I appreciate what you're doing and I appreciate your efforts and and I appreciate the good service that you provided us. And I know you work hard and you've got bills to pay and I appreciate it. And here's a little extra for you, when I'm out at a restaurant. But to me, that's what really living life is all about is being loving, compassionate, and giving that frequency out to others.
Mm. Yeah, look, I love that. And like you've said before, we're spiritual beings having a human experience and vibrating and resonating on those frequencies, authenticity, love,
Mhm.
compassion. The other one that I want to bring in is fun because
Yeah,
so many people get too serious and they just don't have fun anymore.
yeah.
Um, when we're kids, we just naturally want to go and do the stuff we love doing. We just want to go and play. We don't have the same stress, commitment. And as adults, I've seen people don't smile as much. They don't look for laughter. They don't look for fun. And that is the juice of our relationships. That's the juice of our life. And that fun might be fun with yourself in the nature walk. It might be the fun of hanging out with your mates. It might be going on a hot date with your long-term partner, or if you're dating, going and having some dates and having a laugh with people you haven't met before.
Mhm.
And fun really is that, for me, just the juice of life. I'm often called the fun boss on the workshops we run. Like there'll be set tasks, set things. I'm like, how can we make that fun? How can I mix it up? How can we put a game on that? And then you remember those fun times. So the rear view mirror in the car analogy is important. It is to bring forward those moments of remembrance. And ultimately, as a spiritual being, I don't know what your full spiritual beliefs are, Sean, but we're here on some level to remember who we really are.
Mhm.
And that's why that remembrance is important, as is the masculine go forward. What do we want to do with our life? What's our life purpose? What are we here to do and achieve and learn and grow from? And then ultimately, if you feel you've not made it, but if you feel you can and have the capacity to help others step up into that as well, to
Mhm.
serve, to give fun and joy to others. The joy and bliss of fun is absolutely key.
It is. And I've spent a lot of time in sort of studying the Vedic lifestyle, which is Vedic is primarily, I want to say it primarily comes from India, but probably a lot of different places. But they talk about the spiritual realm. And the spiritual realm, which is where we are really from, is referred to as Sat Chit Ananda. And Sat is eternal, Chit is knowledge, and Ananda is bliss. So it's eternal and it's full of knowledge and it's full of bliss. And as a dear friend once said to me, Sat ain't Chit without Ananda. So you could be eternal, you could have all the knowledge in the world, but if there's no bliss and you're not having fun, this party is over. And so I love the fact
Yep.
that you talk about the laughter and the fun. And actually, there's a gentleman that I know fairly well, and he is a holistic practitioner, and he talks about how laughter and laughing releases endorphins and how that is so important for overall health and wellness, and how that's so important for even healing. And that there's stories of people that have literally laughed themselves back into good health because there is that actual chemical release in the body from laughter and having fun. And I'm so glad, man. I mean, you've hit on some great points today. The alignment, the authentic, and the humor and the laughter and the joy. I mean, if I mean, I don't think you could wrap up a better call and a better conversation to just kind of realign the values of what's really important in life than hitting on those 3 points.
Thanks, mate.
So, with all that being said, we've had a great call. One of the things I love to do before we end is I'd like to kind of throw it to you. First off, I'd like to get any final words. And then what I'd also like to do is get your web address and get information on where people can find you, where they can find the podcast. And anybody that's watching this, get on Tony's podcast, subscribe, and start watching and following him because it's absolutely timeless and great information. And with that being said, what would you like to maybe finish up with before we go today?
Well, thank you, Sean, for the opportunity. And for me, the passion project I have at the moment is Realms of Power, where there's 12 different realms in a lot of the stuff we've just covered today. And for people to turn on their power, turn your true aligned power or your tap on would be the absolute key. If one person listens to your show here, Sean, and turns their tap on, what a great, phenomenal thing that is. And again, I've learned just from listening to you and having this conversation. So be open to the learning, have fun. But it's time. It's time in the world that people really step into their power. And I think the government overreach, corporate thing limits our freedom and limits our power. And it's the individual that steps into their power through whether that's spiritual growth, healing some disease, reconnecting their relationships, improving their wealth, whatever it is, whatever realm it is in the realms of power, turn on your power. Like now, it's time.
Mm.
So that would be my message to the listeners. You can find Realms of Power on all of the platforms, YouTube, Spotify, Apple. My personal website, www.tonyrudd.com.au, will have links through to that. And if you're on the Sunshine Coast, just north of Brisbane in Australia, and you'd like an adjustment, come on down to our clinic. I'd love to help, one-on-one if that's where your space is. So, yeah, thanks so much, Sean, for the opportunity to chat on your show. I really appreciate it.
Love it. And Tony, for me, I'm like I love sitting back because I get to learn so much from people like yourself, all these different perspectives, different life experiences, different bases of knowledge. So for me, I'm like a little kid. And I love connecting with all my friends and neighbors in other parts of the world. So the fact that, we're able to connect today with you being Australia to me is wonderful because I feel like the more we all interconnect with each other on this planet, the better the place is going to be. And we always, we're brothers and sisters and friends and family. And I love Australian people, and I love the fact that, anybody that's out there, if you're from Australia, put a comment section down there for us and say hello because we love you guys here in the States and we love everybody everywhere. And so, with that being said, Tony, thank you so much for your time today. Amazing person, man. I'm grateful for everything that you're doing to make this world a better place, your knowledge, your heart, and everything you're doing with working with people on a one-on-one. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sign off right now, but stay with me because we'll chat for a minute and then we can call it a day. But thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks again, Sean.